Hey there, this is Gloria Miller. I am the owner of People First Realty Group. I have been in real estate for a little under 6 years, and I want to share with you guys my story. I want to share my life story with you guys because I think it's really important for us to know the people that we work with and the people that we build relationships and community with. So, because of that, I know I have a lot of friends and a lot of acquaintances that probably don't know about my life and why so many of the things that I do are so important to me, from education to serving and to helping others. All part of the aspect that makes me love real estate so much is that it opens up all of those doors for me. So I want to share with you a little bit of my story and and hopefully it'll help someone or gives you inspiration to move forward in whatever God is calling you to do. I was actually born in Mexico. I was born in Mexico in 1980 in a tiny town in the middle of nowhere. So my mom was a single mom for most of my life. Actually, I want to say pretty much most of my entire life. We lived in Mexico. She worked nights to support our family. I was the only child for 5 years, and then my sister came along. But during this time, my mom worked so much in order to keep us just comfortable, I guess you could say. I grew up by myself a lot of the times because she did work so much, especially working nights. If she ever got the chance to take overtime, my mom would, because that's what you did to make ends meet there. We came to the US when I was about 8 years old. And during that time, it was a big, of course, culture change. I didn't speak English. We knew our cousins, the family that we came to be with, and we didn't stay in the normal border towns of America. We actually ended up going up to Wyoming. So my first experience with English and really the culture, American culture, was in Wyoming. And it was very different than anything that I had ever experienced. I don't really remember learning to speak English. It just kind of happened. I remember having a tutor for a time, but then it just kind of happened. And this is where I learned everything there was to know about the American culture, which realistically it wasn't much. And not that it wasn't there, it was the fact that we were so ingrained into the Hispanic culture that I didn't change my mentality or way of thinking Hispanic or American culture because I was so ingrained to the Hispanic culture. During that time, we did work in the field, just of course, like the just normal expectations. I started working in the field probably when I was about 12. And I did that for a few years. I didn't do it my whole life. But as a teenager, I did get the fun experience of working in different aspects of the field. And I would not recommend it. It is not the most fun job. And that is part of the reason why I am so in love with education and the ability to grow in this country. Back to really the Hispanic culture, we were so ingrained in it that I still, even though we lived in America, I grew up believing and thinking the same way as we had in Mexico. So when I was 16, I met my husband and we ended up getting married at 17. And then by the time that I was 18, actually right by the time that I turned 18, I became a mom. And then by the time that I was 21, I had 3 kids. So when I was 21 and I had my last daughter, I realized as I started to see my older daughters grow, and with my younger daughter, I realized that if anything was going to change, it had to come from me. I was able to experience, we had lived in, we no longer lived in Wyoming, we moved to Michigan, and then we came to Germany with the military. And I was able to experience a different culture, a different, fully immersed into the American culture, which I guess is odd doing that in Germany, but it took me away from my heritage, from the Hispanic culture that we were really entwined with, even in the US. And I was able to see many different opportunities, all the things that people were doing with their kids. And I realized that, the only way that I was ever going to get ahead in life, and not just me, but my kids, I started looking at my girls and realizing that if change had to happen, it had to come from me. Nobody could do that for me. So at 21, right after my daughter, my youngest of my 3 girls, was born, I decided to go and start the GD. The military had so many programs, they had so many resources. Most of the time, we didn't take advantage of them, but this time I do remember hearing of the GED service that they offered, and I just decided to do it. So I went, I took my tiny baby girl and my other two daughters that were a little bit older, and we went to the coupon club because, we were very young in the military and barely making any money. We had to coupon to make our ends meet. So after that, we went to the library where you could sign up to take your GED. I had my daughters and signed up for it. And I think 2 weeks later, took my GED and passed. And that was the beginning of my education path. It was a very small step, very, very small step, but a very significant one that I didn't realize until, I guess really until now, as I'm quite a lot older and looking at how all of those little steps added up to so much more. But the one thing that I did realize is that I was the only person that could change my life. Now, in 2003, I did use my GED for something. I started cosmetology school and I graduated at the end of 2003. The one thing that I took away from that, I love cosmetology, but it was very difficult at the time with 3 kids, and just, you have to really have people that love what you do. And it's not that I couldn't do it. It was just quite a bit different working for commission or working for yourself. And I was not in the mental state to do that yet. But the one thing that I did learn from cosmetology school was that I could learn. I graduated or got out of my cosmetology class with one of my very good friends. We are still in touch together 20 years later. And it wasn't really until 2015 that I graduated real college, 4-year degree. I graduated with 2 associates and my bachelor's and a certification in management foundations. I thought I was completely ready to take on the world. My real goal in college, to kind of backtrack, was really to finish college before my girls got to high school. I wanted to show them that they could do it as well. And I did that. I did finish in 2015, like I said, and it was the year actually before my oldest daughter graduated high school. So in 2017, my husband decided that he no longer wanted to be part of our family. So he went up and left. He found his way, and I ended up with a 4-year-old, a brand new house that we had just purchased, and working for an enterprise whose hours were pretty rough to work with. I ended up switching jobs to a healthcare company to better my hours, to spend more time, or to be able to have more time with my daughter, because now I was a single parent again. And during that time, about 6 months into the job, I was actually let go because I was just not as detailed oriented as I thought I was. They required you to do so many different things that I had never done before. I really felt like I had failed at life. I was going through a divorce again. I had a 4-year-old, and I had to rent out my brand new house that we'd had for a year because I couldn't afford the payments on it anymore. We were living in an apartment, and now I was unemployed. It was just felt like a terrible time in my life. During this time, I didn't know what else to do but get more education. I'd fallen in love with education and I love learning. So I went back and started my master's degree in legal studies. My end goal was to one day go to law school. I was so in love with education. I was so in love with the process and the experiences that it brought that I decided that was my best thing to do while I look for a job, and perhaps use that for my future employment. During that time, a friend of mine said, have you ever considered real estate? And I had considered it for a short amount of time after we bought our brand new house. When I had our agent help us and I saw the way he did business, I said, I could do this better. I could do that. But at the time, it just wasn't the right time. But at this time, when she suggested it, it just seemed to open up a whole new aspect I hadn't truly considered. From one day to another, I decided that this was a great idea. I started real estate school in November of 2018. and I got out of school. I did in person, and I went to school for a couple months. And I got out of school and got my license, all done by the end of January. By the end of January 2019, I began working with a team in Killeen, Texas. And I learned so much from this team, I can't even tell you. But it was hard. We would work really long days. Sometimes we would be in office working on paperwork or even sending out texts at 11 o'clock at night, which I am sorry if I ever sent you a text at 11 o'clock at night. Now, my very first year, I actually sold 29 homes. Some of them were partnered up with some of the people on the team. I was one of 2 agents out of the 5 people in the office that were full-time. So a lot of the times we ended up picking up kind of what was happening and other agents couldn't cover. So the first year was great, but it was very hard, and I made not a whole lot of money. I made more money, a lot more money than I was in my old job, but it was still a really hard year. The best part about the first year in real estate is that it made me realize how much of everything I had learned in my past careers, my past jobs, and different experiences in life, I was able to use them all into real estate. Ever since I can remember, I wanted to be like a doctor or a nurse. I wanted to be a teacher, something that you had a title and you can put in a box and it would just fit perfectly. I was never able to do that throughout my entire life. I always felt like I just didn't fit in. But after the first year in real estate, what I realized was that God was building something different for me. Every single aspect that I ever learned from enterprise, from the insurance company. I worked at a pawn shop once. All the customer service, everything I ever learned fit perfectly into this box of real estate. And I loved it. I used it all. There isn't a skill that I didn't acquire that I'm not using, from Excel to accounts receivable to accounts payable. When you're working in real estate, you're running your own business. You have to do it all. There isn't a department for different areas, at least not for a while. Today in real estate, I have a huge community, and I know so many people, and they're dependent on me and I'm dependent on them, from the real estate community to my clients. And I love every part of it. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, but as overwhelming as it is so equally rewarding. One of the things that has been the most rewarding of all is being able to employ people, being able to give back to my community, and being able to give in general. I think with real estate, I've been able to give sometimes more than the years that I made just in working a regular job. And that's not to brag, that's to say God has opened so many doors. I've been given so much that I can tell you, when I was a teenager, I remember people opening up their wallets and paying for me to get a driver's license. I remember people giving so that I could go to youth group. I remember people being available to drive us to church every Sunday, every Wednesday. There's so many areas in my life that I have been so blessed that there isn't a part of me that doesn't want to give every day. The thing that I love about real estate is the ability to serve others in a genuine way. You make connections with people that you would never have met any other way. And if I tear up, it's because I've been blessed so much. And every day, my goal is to be able to bless others with the way that I provide service for them. I'm thankful for all of the people that I've met, all of the friendships I've created that have been created through real estate, and all of the things that I'm able to do because of my career. I want you to know that I do not take it lightly. My passion is education, because I feel that through education, I was able to gain so many different experiences, open up so many doors, and be able to meet people that I never would have had I stayed in my own bubble. So today, I love educating people. I love educating teenagers and mentoring other people that are going through this process. What is in the future for me? Well, there is some pretty exciting stuff that is in the future. Just recently, I started my very own 501c3 that will actually help mentor teenagers, help provide assistance for kids going through CPS. And I will put out all this information because there's so many different ways to give. But I'm also partnering with financial wealth advisors in how to work your real estate goals into your financial wealth plan, because it is such an important aspect that I've been able to learn through this process that I want to share that with you guys. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope you get something out of my story. And if you have any questions or there's any way that I can help you, please feel free to reach out. This is Gloria Miller, associate broker and founder of People First Realty Group, where we put people over profit.